Welcome back, guys. This Wo Long Fallen Dynasty build is the best build in the game so far to date. I destroy every boss in New Game Plus with this build, and all the footage you see is from New Game Plus. I am doing huge damage to bosses, and every single ability I use hits like a literal truck. Every single swing, every single hit knocks out enemies, just destroys their spirit meter and their health overall, and the DPS on it is insane. This insane DPS heavy spirit break build can literally wipe out an enemy's spirit meter in 2 or 3 hits and can help you easily beat the hardest enemies on New Game Plus difficulty. Being that we're getting closer to DLC for the game, you need to have this build just because it's literally that good. I've literally ran through every New Game Plus mission on this game using this build, and in just a minute I'm going to go over every single thing you need to know to make this build and maximize it so you are literally just knocking people out left and right. I'm also going to go over a couple secret things for this build that's going to take it to the next level that you really haven't used in other builds up until this point, and I don't know if really anybody has. And by using those secrets on this build, it's just going to make it that much better. This damage I'm doing in these clips right now is going to seem like literally small potatoes to the damage that we're going to be able to do to everybody in this game. This build is so fun to play, and if you think Wo Long is fun, then you need to try out Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is the popular realistic fantasy RPG celebrating their 4th anniversary, where you can collect hundreds of unique champions of all kinds to fight along your side. You can equip and upgrade every character with unique armor and weapons, and upgrade all kinds of skills to use, and send them to battle to defeat your enemies, level up your characters, and explore countless dungeons and endgame content, and take part in giant boss fights of the likes you have never seen. You can play with your friends and clan members to dominate enemies, and arenas to rank up your characters. If I were to pick 4 of my most favorite characters to invite to a dinner party, my first would have to be Angar. Angar is a HP based Void legendary that specializes in arena and can cause some serious damage. Coronar is a Void legendary from the Skinwalker faction and can control a crowd for your party, making him the perfect security. Mithrala Lifebane is earned from taking down the Hydra clan boss, and don't gaze into her eyes or she will do more than just turn you to stone. And Gorgrab, whose devastating combat capabilities will make you literally run in fear. Raid is introducing new live arena content where you can select from a choice of PvP game modes to match up against other players 4 times during the day. Select your champions to battle and battle other players live in the flesh, as well as earning extra redeemable rewards if you are an Amazon Prime member, giving you multiple extra perks and items. With all of this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid, if you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses. We're talking an epic champion, Kellen the Strike, and other useful items. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name YT Creative. And if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. So just hit my link in the description and I'll see you on the battlefield. Let's get back to the video. So I'm going to show you the best build and how it's set up right now. This build is primarily Earth and Metal Virtue, set up with a couple extra points in Wood Virtue. That way we get health and are able to tank a lot more damage in New Game Plus. You can see our primary melee weapon here does 650 damage. Now your other weapon slot can be whatever weapon you would like. I just have a weapon set here for my actual set bonuses, so that can change depending on your build if you want. Our physical resistance here is 20.5%, meaning we have max physical resistance because we're wearing all heavy armor, giving us even more tanking ability. Now I'm going to show you really quickly the overall stat bonuses that we can have so you can look over them. The primary ones, which I'll show you on our gear and weapons, are all of the different kinds of actual special effects and debuffs we can put on an enemy to do increase regular damage and spirit damage to them over time, as well as the principle of Lingbao effect. Again, the other 2 or 3 things to take note of is Toxin attack power, lightning attack power, which is good if you have the correct enchantment on your weapon, and the damage dealt effect overall, as well as melee attack power on your weapons if you have that available. So for our gear, the primary weapon we're going to be using is the Great Club of Polaris. Our special effects are Boulder Glide and Rock Crash. Rock Crash is an amazing skill that you can use over and over and over against enemies and is a great martial arts attack. And you can see the items that we have on here. Some are really important to note. One important thing is negate attribute damage upon guard. This effect is very useful for New Game Plus and your ability to tank hits. melee attack power if you have it available, and damage to enemies with negative effects. You want damage to enemies with negative effects everywhere you can across this build. If not, you can deal with damage dealt on your gear. And you can see here with an attack power of 650, this weapon does a ton of damage. Our secondary weapon is going to be anything you choose. Here I just have an example. You basically just want to use any weapon you feel comfortable with. I use these bronze dual swords even though they don't go with the build at all, just for the Grace of Ling Bao set bonus at the bottom. And you can see here we have Spirit Gain that's already established on the weapon that you can't take off, slow on enemy upon martial arts, and damage to enemy with negative effects again. And regardless of all the other set bonuses, I believe this one is the best. And it's because once you get all of these things filled up for the set bonus itself, you get all of the following debuffs that you put on enemies. And if you have at least 3 debuffs on enemies, which this build is designed to keep indefinitely, you get the Principle of Ling Bao special effect, meaning it increases HP damage dealt to enemies based on 3 criteria. If you have 1, 2, or 3 debuffs. If you have 3 debuffs on the enemy, you deal an extra 22% damage overall, which is too crazy to ignore. That's why this is the best set in the game, period. Here you only need 1 range weapon because the only one you have selected is the only one you get the benefit for. But you can see I farmed this crossbow here. It gives me set bonus requirement mitigation, meaning I get a free point to whatever set I'm currently wearing, being the Grace of Ling Bao set. And you can see on here, I've just put Toxin attack power, damage dealt, and damage received as well. Now each piece of gear that I have is heavy armor. You don't have to focus on this, but if you have heavy armor gear, it makes tanking and playing New Game Plus a lot easier. Especially with this build, since we have so many points in Earth, you lower your equipment rate almost instantly. So again, each piece has the Grace of Ling Bao set bonus. The helmet has damage received negative effect, which I put on almost all my gear. Damage reduction, again, you want to put a special effect like this on every piece of gear that you can. Toxin attack power, which is our most important attack power here, and lightning attack power as well, which I'll go over in just a second. On our chest piece, damage received, toxin attack power, and lightning attack power again. On our gauntlets, power gain upon deflecting a critical strike, lightning attack power, and toxin attack power. And for our greaves, we have toxin attack power, damage dealt, lightning attack power, and poison accumulation on enemies, so that way we can keep our negative debuffs on enemies the entire time. Now you may be asking why I have lightning attack power on my gear. This is because you can apply the lightning debuff without using any lightning skills to enemies. You just need to have the lightning enchant effect on your weapon, meaning you can actually put a lightning, fire, toxin, enchantment on your actual weapon as an embedment. I just don't currently have one, and I'm currently looking for one. But once you get that, put that on your gear to give you like plus 15 enchant. And then once it combines with all these other lightning attack power abilities, you're going to be putting lightning attack power just normally hitting enemies with your weapon. And for our skills, we're going to be using these 4 skills. We're going to be using Elemental Plague. We're going to be using Venom Snare, Life Wither, and Molten Calamity Thorn. This is going to be useful because we're going to be able to use Elemental Plague to increase the accumulation of all of our status effects, so that way we can apply poison even easier to the enemy. If you didn't know, poison when applied to an enemy on this game is very OP for the simple fact that if you apply poison to an enemy, all of the current debuffs that the enemy has stay at max capacity. So if you just keep applying poison to enemies, none of their debuffs will ever disappear, making it an insane skill. So we cast Elemental Plague to increase that accumulation. We'll then cast Venom Snare on the enemy to actually apply the poison to the enemy. And over time, we'll just apply these 2 skills a couple more times during the fight. We'll then use Life Wither early on and throughout the fight. It'll release a curse bolt that hits enemies, and it'll allow them to receive more damage. So you'll be doing more damage while Life Wither is active on the opponent. And then once you do a huge critical strike and the opponent has a ton of debuffs, because you can apply like 5 or 6 debuffs in like 5 seconds literally. Once you hit an opponent with a fatal strike and do a bunch of damage, you're then going to use Molten Calamity Thorn on them, and you're going to do a bunch of damage and additional damage depending on how many debuffs the enemy has, which means you're going to do a lot. And then you're just going to reapply those debuffs again in like 4 or 5 seconds, and it'll be super easy to do. And you might even be able to wipe out some bosses in 1 fatal strike, essentially. Now the way this build works is you need to first cast Elemental Plague to buff your status accumulation, meaning when you cast your poison spells and do your lightning damage on your weapon, you'll be getting both of those effects on your target, literally in 2 or 3 hits. So next you're going to cast Life Wither onto the enemy. That way you do more damage over time. And then you're going to cast the poison spell Venom Snare. So that way poison debuffs are put on your enemy. And this, like I mentioned earlier, will keep any other status effects permanent, as you can see in the top left here. And that works with status effects added after this as well. So make sure you do all of these things early, then apply as many status effects to your enemy as you can, and they'll all stay permanent. The only thing you want to make sure to do is every once in a while cast Elemental Plague and hit the enemy with Venom Snare again to keep constantly applying the poison debuff and make sure it's always active on target. As long as it's always active on the target, you will never lose these debuffs and they will stay on the enemy the entire time, giving you literally like 50% probably increased damage overall because of this. Now those are all the main points to absolutely destroy everybody in Wo Long with this build. I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of the gameplay so you can see me absolutely annihilate these bosses.
Second wind.
I've yet to attain my ideal. For a true test of my skills, I challenge you to a duel. A warrior as valiant as you surely cannot fall here.
Was that it?
Strength in me. I will not yield. Glad to see I was not wrong to put my faith in you. The two, one day though.